Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Dr. Eve here, checking in on those who have answered the call or are trying to answer the call. I'm Dr. Eve. I am your health and human service educator. I am a veteran nonprofit leader. Um, what can I say? I have degrees in education. I hold criminal justice theory, substance abuse counseling, and health and human services from birth to death. And so I am excited to be here with all of the arsenal and 30 years of experience from my angel investors, my employers, who 30 years in corporate academia and healthcare. So I'm really, really excited to be here to share with you, those of you who are really knocking doors down to say, you know what, my lived experience matters, and I have something that I can do and offer to humanity, right? Because I remember all the times when life just happens. Life happens, and the one thing God assured me for sure is that nothing, and I mean nothing in life will be wasted. That was the my chapter that I authored in an anthology that I shared my story of being in therapy and overcoming life's traumatic events, which led to me traveling around the world to share my story, physically traveling around the world. The most exciting time in my life to be a part and sharing in the United Nations, in the Middle East, in Europe, in Canada, in all of these amazing places where God will put you in a space. He will use those testimonies in a space to touch the lives of those who may be dealing with things they've never mentioned, right? And maybe they just need someone to say, have, you know, someone they can talk to, someone they can build and break bread with, someone they can grow in relationship with and say, hey, how did you do that? What was it like? What steps did you take? Honest to God, it was God, right? God in therapy, God in therapy. So I'm here today to share some of my next steps in nonprofit development. I left off my last live talking about how getting in right relationship with the schools, with the starting mentoring to have more intimacy with the students that I was going to be working with, and then developing what that could look like in the community, because schools and community go hand in hand when you're talking about working with children and saving the next generation of Americans. That was my goal, was to save the next generation of Americans. And so I had to do so with one of the most difficult populations there was to deal with, and that is teenagers, those who were in middle school and just too young to get a job, too old to be in after school, going home sometimes to empty homes because their parents have to work, sometimes second and third shifts. That means that a lot was laid on, but not only that, but they were dealing with their own issues of identity, their own issues of, hormonal issues of just growing up, growing pains. And so I left off sharing with you all how successful that was for me to get in community, how it was for me to, I created income by going into substitute because I left the job and said, I'm going to do this full time. I was brave, like I will leave a job after 10 years. I was gone. And I did that on every single 10, 10, and 10. After 10, if there was no growth, I was out the door. It was something else. There was something else, right? And so at the end of the day, the substituting worked really well for me to develop my teaching skills, develop my relationships with students, get to know what they deal with every day in school, right? Um, Now that I look back over what that was like for me being in community with them, I also now look back and remember now, I wish I knew what I knew today then. I wish I knew what I knew today back then, because I now know I now know the adverse lived experiences that these children are going through. I now have a theoretical perspective that is in practice now, practical application of that theory, and what happens when children maladapt when they have these issues. Um, you don't know what they come into school with. You don't know whether they have eaten, or whether the lights are off, or whether they have just been assaulted by someone in the home, or whether they're whatever. There are so many issues and ways that children are showing up in the schools that you just don't know. But I'm not here really to talk about that, but I can. And so I want, for those of you who are dealing with that population, or answering another call, and just humanity, just human beings, how human beings are showing up in the world. We all have to be more cognizant of how people are showing up in the spaces when they present themselves to us for the first time that day, or the next day, or the day after that, because we don't know what folks are dealing with. So, with all that said, be kind, right? Um, so we talked about me going into as a substitute. We talked about me starting as a mentor to develop an intimate relationship. And we talked about not reestablishing any curriculums, not creating any new things, because there was curriculum that I could use in all three of these areas. In school, it was the standard course. In mentoring, Ladies of Distinction program that I started my little circle, there was the Girl Power curriculum. And then the in community, when there was the 4-H, right? So there was always something, free resources that you can use to begin. You have to choose which one is best for your target population. Now, I have created one myself now that I use to work and build community and collective all around the country. So it's a brand new curriculum that's designed just for Black, Indigenous people of color, and how we operate, how we build collective, how we build healthier relationships, healthier communities, all the whole game. So my next step was to let me see if my team is available real quick. My next step was to begin to think about my long-term goals. My long-term goals in terms of yeah, I'm sorry, I was dealing with my locticianist. I had to try to figure out my appointment time. So my next thing was to think about my long-term goals. What was the ultimate goal I was trying to achieve? Well, there was this big goal of building a center, completely building one from the ground up. Because if y'all not interested, then I'm gonna find me some funders, some angel investors, and we're gonna get the building. That's how big this thing was for me. Build something outside of school that was for community. So I decided that my goal was to build a community center, an access place for families, students, because I was working with youth and family. My organization was the Youth Today Community Resource Center. So the goal was to build a community resource center. But until then, I was going to either lease or be in relationship with those who would loan me a space for a period of time. Then maybe I could, garner up some funds and ask the community, say, hey, community, because I was big. I remember asking the community for things because I needed help, right? But I knew that they would support me because they also knew that what I was doing and I was in right relationship. So my next step was, okay, if I want to build this community center and I can't get this community center today, what should I do now, right? So what I did was, since I was in the school systems, we were getting ready to start the summer, and the summer was going to bring a whole new set of issues, because that means that these children would be out of school while their parents were working. All kinds of things happen, y'all, when parents are working. All kinds of things. Just all kinds of things, right? We know we were children, right? All kinds of things happen when your parents are out at work and you are not practicing doing um, what you are expected to do, even if your parents aren't present, right? So I had to think quick on my feet as to what was going to happen. Here's what I was faced with. It's summertime. They're not going to even, some of these children won't even, their meals come from when they're in school, right? Most of their meals come from free lunches. I knew that by the school report card. The school report card told me that. It says this is the number of children who are being served lunch at school, breakfast at school, and it was over 75% of that entire population. And so now I realize, okay, this is a variable. Now I'm dealing with some children who are going to be hungry, who could possibly be hungry. I don't know that for sure, but I know what the data told me. Please share the video. Thank you so much. I see you out there, Angela. So the data showed me that these children, there's likelihood that there's going to be some very hungry little children out there. So what do I do now? What do I do now, knowing that latchkey is a problem? Now we're talking about all day summer. Now we're talking about exposure to whatever because they home all day. And now we're talking about the fact that they may not be they may be hungry, and we don't have no resources over here. We have nothing. When I say nothing, there was nothing. Angela, you can vouch for me. What's over there now other than the Boys and Girls Club? What's over there other than the Boys and Girls Club? That was what my goal was, to build a center. And that Boys and Girls Club is built in the exact same location as my blueprint wanted and desired. Okay? So, but in the meantime, before we could get to that, because that would be a couple years down the road, what do we do? So I had to think strategically, like if I'm in the schools, the people know me. I went to the principal. I went to the principal of the school and said, hey, listen. And I gave him my proposal, sat down and talked with him and said, he's a black guy at the time. He was a veteran. I don't know was it Principal James? I think his name was James, Principal James. And I wrote him a letter. He knew the work I was doing. He knew about the mentoring program. He knew about all those things. And he was totally in favor of helping me in whatever way that he could. And he was big on the understanding of what happens, from the school to the community and from the community to the school. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you think by any chance I could get a classroom during the summer? Because the school is open for lunch. The gym, it's open for summer school. But they had some trailers. And I asked them, I said, hey, do you think that, so he offered me to be able to use one of the trailers. And as a result, I was able to go ahead and start the very first summer program right there on the campus of Welcome Middle School. So when I tell you there is a succession to everything. And so for me, not only was I now moving from building in right relationship, building a program that was not just in school, but now we're talking about out of school, which my ultimate desire was to build this community center outside of school. So you see where I'm going? So it's all working together, and you have to be a strategist. You have to think strategic about what's my next move to keep going, because school's about to close, which means that I won't be substituting because school's closed, right? And so, but I need to keep going because the problem is about to be bigger because of summer. So how did that solve the problem of the children being out of school? One, I was given a place right there at school where the children were used to coming, right? At that school, they were used to coming there. Two, there is this program and during the summers that the schools opened the schools for food. So Welcome Middle School was one of those schools where children could actually come to eat breakfast and to eat lunch. So not only was this a good fit for me to be a leader in this space, to supply something, to offer summer programming of some kind to a small population, because I couldn't serve everybody, but I could certainly serve someone. And so I chose to do that and to have the program there at Welcome Middle School. We had a little trailer that we could use for some of our programming, but they also let me use the gym. So that was cool, right? Because we had they let me use the outside. We had what you call that, water play. We had the ability to have work inside the gym, to do activities, recreation, right? And that was the beginning of something really, really beautiful, because I will tell you that my children ate. We had a program, we had a place to do our work, and then we had a place to do recreation. But here's the beauty. Here's the beauty of what happened in that moment. Um, Although, because I made this relationship with the schools to do this summer program, and the children ate, they gave them a place to be in school, a place to be out of school, because I was working with them out of school as well. But it gave me so many ideas, and the ideas that flourished from that were starting my travel team for boys. I started a travel basketball team because my goal was, I'm doing something for girls in the school, the mentoring program, but how do I tap into the boys' needs? Because my sons needed outlets too, and they love sports. So I started my very first travel team, travel basketball team. And I just asked the community for whatever I needed. A radio station, I would call. They knew I was doing the work. I sent out letters, and I would get on the radio. And whenever I needed something, I would just call. If I needed to buy um, equipment, for example, I needed summer equipment. I didn't have the money to do it, but my community did. And so because I had this program, and I had this built, working at the schools, they let me have the building. They let me have to use the gym. My kids could get food, because summer school was out, so they got to eat breakfast and lunch. So I didn't have to supply food, right? So it just all worked out. So it's like, when you want to do something and when you are following the call, God will make a way for you when you're on the right trajectory. So you have to always be asking, if it's working, then usually you on to something, right? You on to something. And I knew that I was really on to something, and I just had to keep going. So every season was a new succession to the plan. Ultimate goal: build the community center, right? Build a building that will last forever. We'll get to that, but what I want to share with you is that worked. Building a relationship with the school, getting that trailer for the summer, them having food on site, so my kids didn't have to go to another school for food, having the rec center, and I called the radio station and asked my community to give us money for equipment, because I didn't have any equipment. I needed basketballs, dodgeballs, hula hoops, whatever I could get. I needed the community to give me some money because I was a nonprofit. Oh, by the way, I had established my articles, did my research, my needs assessment, business plan. Everything was ironclad. And so at that point, I just needed my community because it was working. People saw it, teachers, principals, students, parents, everybody knew what I was trying to do, save my community because we didn't have the resources to keep our children in a safe place, right? Safe, right? Safe from themselves, right? So that's my live for today. I'll be coming back again just to keep sharing with you what it was like, the succession plan, because it led to some really big things. So I want you to stay tuned because if you are called to start something, there is a way that maketh right. And I'm hoping that by sharing with you what the succession plan looked like for me as I was following the call on my life, where I knew nothing about any of this stuff other than being a parent. But the beauty is I was willing to learn, I was willing to read, I was willing to follow the call, I was willing to be exhausted because it was exhausting. And then I was willing to be led. I was willing to ask. I was willing to be in relationship, and I was just willing to do the work. When you're called out here, you just got to be willing to do the work, and it ain't always pretty. But when you're called to do something, God will make a way. Continue to serve. So I'm here for you right now. I'm gonna open up the airwaves in case there's someone here who has questions that I could answer immediately. Maybe you're in the process right now of answering your call. Maybe you have a question about where you are and um, what could be some next steps for you. Well, I'm here if you need support. So if you are someone who's answering the call and you are in the throes of what's next and what's possible and need an action plan or a support system, then I have a community. I Am Wellbeing. It's a hub for those who are peer-to-peer directors or learning and becoming directors of programs, and who are leading with their lived experience, right? Because in everything we do, usually we do it because of something we've experienced, right? If we're honest with ourselves. Now, many people don't want to, share their honesty. That's okay. That's them. Because it takes courage. It takes courage to get out here and share your story, but it don't take all that much for me when I knew who did it, and that was God. And so God said we overcome by each other's testimony. And when he tell us to go tell something, when he tell us to do something, we better be obedient to that thing because our success is attached to our obedience. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that your success is contingent upon your obedience, right? Period. Period. And so being obedient to that call didn't mean I wouldn't go through some other things. Certainly I did. Certainly I did. But I was trudging through some of the worst times of my life. You would never know or understand what I was going through. But I was going through it, and I was going through full force and sometimes really scared. Sometimes really scared, not knowing what was going to happen next. I would have to go into some of these spaces and in tears and hide my tears, but I was going to do this work because I was called to do this work, right? So if you have questions and you are interested in starting something, then grab yourself a discovery session. Go to the link above and grab yourself a discovery session. See how you can get started, or get in community with others who are doing and following the call, who are building and utilizing the resources that are available to them to move on that thing because God has a plan. And we have to be in place for all the things that are coming in order. We have to prepare. We have to prepare by following the calling. That part. So you have to prepare by following the calling that God has called you to do, right? And know that He will give you and supply everything that you need along the way. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Eve. I am a health and human service educator. I did not have all of these degrees when I started this journey, but God saw fit and said, okay, it's time for you to go get more, because I needed to understand there was a bigger work. And in that bigger work required me to get some education about the populations of people that God would then assign me to more. You know, He always has more for us, y'all. Don't you ever think that just because you're going through a season where it feels like the bottom has just fell out, right? That God doesn't have more, because He does. He really does. We don't see it in the moment that we're feeling or going through, but when we're following the calling, regardless of how we're feeling, and we don't allow the enemy to derail us, because there are going to be times when you look into the eyes of a family member and you're going to be like, who is this? Like, it's the demon. It's a show enough demon. Where's my child? Right? So those were some days. Those were some of the days I was going through, like, who are you? And what did you do with my child? Because I ain't raised this person right here. Or maybe I was. What was happening? So anyway, there are those days that you have as parents that you be like, huh? Right. So anyway, needless to say, my children are doing well, and it took a lot of prayer, because they don't come with manuals, y'all. They don't come with manuals. And I know that if I was going through like this and I was trying to be a good mom and the best I could with all of my flaws, because I was a parent who was also had untreated adverse experiences in life. And so a lot of those experiences was impacting my parenting, right? We don't always want to tell the truth about that, but it was impacting my parenting and making some of the right decisions, even though people thought I was a wonderful parent. No, you don't know the whole story. I'm dealing with some issues of my own. And because of that, it was having a ripple effect. It was rolling over into my family life. But nevertheless, God is so good. He is so good to do what He promised, because He's a covenant keeping God. When you love Him and are in covenant with Him, He said, if you abide in Him and let Him abide in you, there, y'all. Wow. So it was a blessing. It's a blessing to be alive. So I just wanted to share that, how that whole relationship turned into me having a summer program to continue. You got to be consistent. You have to have continuity. There could be no break in this relationship. There could be no break in this assignment, because having a break in the assignment kind of it gets in the middle of the relationship you're building with the children. They don't need that. Children need consistency and continuity in the relationship that you're building with them. So I wasn't letting that happen on my watch. So I just did what I need to do. A closed mouth don't get fed. I was going to ask for what I needed, and I did. I asked for what I needed. So for those of you who are interested, please, and have not yet started something and we're interested in discovering how you could get started, grab a discovery session. Or maybe you are already a leader on this path and need a strategy. You need a strategy in this time, because a lot is pivoting. A lot of things are hybrid now, online, offline, right? And that is exactly where my research is centered, in the online, offline use of technology in practice when we are dealing with humans, right? Human programmings. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. Again, my name is Dr. Eve. I'm a health and human service educator. I've been in the field for 30 years doing this work, and I wouldn't change a thing. I learned so much along the way, and you will too. You will too. Follow the call that God has called you to do. I'm here to support you. Visit our website at ncbwr.org, or you can visit my website if you just want to, work with me individually. But over at NCBWR, we work in collective, so that's up to you. You choose whichever one you like to be in community with. But somebody's here, ncbwr.org, ncbwr.org. That's our Black women's platform. But if you are wanting to do some other work with me, you can visit my website right here. Or if you just want to be in community with entrepreneurs who are growing and building, I Am Wellbeing is also a community that I lead. If you want to be in community with peers and grow as a peer support person, that is a great place to be as well, because that's where I do a lot of my peer directing um, and developing a collective with NCBWR. So come on in, y'all. Get started. Follow the call. This is Dr. Eve. I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace and blessings.